When I cast my mind back to the events I'm about to describe, I see images that could almost be from a dream or a fevered imagination. It was utterly bizarre, and I can't believe that it happened. I grew up in Paisley, a town in Scotland. I used to hang out with a load of alternative kids, and being too young to go to a pub, we would stock up on booze at weekends and go adventuring. We had heard of a huge abandoned insane asylum just outside of town. It was called Leverdale. Look it up. So we decided to hit it one weekend and make a day of it. The old place was located not far from the high school most of us went to, and was close to a housing estate. By close, I mean about a mile into underdeveloped land. We got the booze, shoved it into backpacks, and made our way out to the place. It was quite hard to get to. We didn't realize there was an easier route yet, so the 8 or 9 of us ended up jumping a fence into some little woodland that was nestled between a bunch of buildings to see if we could push through to the abandoned complex. Weirdly enough, there was a little path in there that led through various tiny meadows, and then into pockets of trees. There was a small stream as well, running near to the path, but hidden by really tall grass. As we made our way along, I heard some sounds from behind me, and I was last in the group, and saw a figure darting away from view into the grass, surrounded by smoke. I was really confused for a second, and then shouted to everyone else to stop and take a look. As we all stood transfixed, the grass suddenly started being consumed by ever-growing flames. As it was a roasting summer's day, the flames seemed to grow really fast, and quickly, I felt panic setting in. It wasn't long before the flames were starting to spread all around us as we frantically pushed forward through the grass to the next foresty bit of trail. I saw a deer in there, terrified, and it wouldn't run, because the path ahead beyond the trees was on fire as well. There was smoke everywhere, and I remember a friend of mine shouting to run down to the river and wait in there. We all ran down through literal fire to the water. There was no way out as the whole area was surrounded by really high walls with fences on top at this point, so we had to crouch down with our heads right beside the water to breathe at all. The fire burned for ages, and we could hear animals screaming from what used to be the tree area we had been standing in. It was now a huge fireball. Eventually, after what seemed like forever, the fire burned down enough for us to try and move out. There was limited material to burn, since it was a pretty confined area. We pushed up on the river for a bit, but it ended up going underground into a wall shaft or something, so we had to double back and work up the path. We ended up having to go through the trees, and we were horrified by what we saw. Loads of deer were stacked up near an opening that must have had air and were burned really badly. The heat was still intense, and there were still flames licking off the trees, so I, for one, didn't want to hang around for too long. But I'll never forget the image of those deer twitching and dying. We made it out the other side and could see the Leverdale complex ahead of us. All we could think of was finding a safe place to stop and have a drink, and maybe another route home. I was the only one who saw the figure, but we were all pretty convinced that some group of people had set fire to the path from both ends. Whether it was meant as a prank that went too far, we won't ever know, but it was life-threatening in the end. We ended up finding another path back to civilization. Thankfully, that didn't involve walking through a confined area. I wonder sometimes if it was a prank, or if some really sick people wanted to kill us. The heat is something I can't forget either. It was like being in an oven or under a grill, and our eyebrows were all singed off, and we looked like we had been covered in soot. Won't ever forget it. And as ever, team of pyromaniacs, please, let's not meet again. So this just happened today. Against my better judgment, at the beginning of the month I got a Tinder. I matched with a few guys, etc. One of them is James. We ended up texting each other, and he seemed pretty chill and pretty into me. He's a decent-looking guy, and we seemed to click. He had apparently been in a relatively abusive relationship with a woman, and he was looking to start over. According to him, she had hit him with a frying pan and pepper sprayed him once. He kept going on about how crazy she was. All right, it happens. We went out to the movies this past Friday, and I had a great time. We ended up talking for a few hours, and we hit it off pretty well. I asked about the ex because I was a bit curious as to why he'd stay with someone like that. He didn't say anything positive about her, just that she was crazy, had mental illnesses, and didn't take her meds, that kind of stuff. She had tried to baby trap him, but she had a miscarriage. He expressed relief that she didn't end up with the kid. He said he had felt obligated to her. Again, I get that. In all, I had a good time. This morning rolls around and he tells me that he had hooked up with his ex last night and that he was going to try and work things out with her. Mildly insulting that I lost out to an abusive chick, but whatever. I tell him it's cool. He then, a few hours later, texted me to say that she was crazy and he thought she was changing, but she wasn't. Blah, blah. He kept asking if he could see me. He was being very pushy about wanting to see me today. He begged for 5 minutes of my time so he could explain it to me. I politely told him that I didn't want to be involved with someone who was clearly so hung up on his ex. This is where it got nuts. He admitted he still was, but that he wanted to see me today so I could meet her and she could determine if I was better for him than she was, and that she wanted him to be happy because he and I had a connection. I flipped after that. Told him that the fact he needed his ex to determine who was right for him was absolutely nuts. That is not what love is, and that I wanted no part of it. His ex started texting me after that, and it was nonstop insults and incoherent crap that made no sense. She also dropped the bomb that she was his wife. I told her to piss off, basically, and block the number. I went on Tinder to message him where I called him a piece of crap, and if he was intelligent, he should leave her and never message me again. He started to harass me saying that I was miserable because they have a beautiful love together and all this crazy crap. He then went on to say, "My wife knows where you work. I hope she doesn't do anything rash." And I told him if that was a threat, I would gladly go to the police. He then said that she's been to jail before, she's not afraid, and that she loves him so much she'd mess anyone up and risk jail for him, that she'd kill my friends if they tried to protect me, that she's armed and dangerous. I told him goodbye, reported him, and deleted my Tinder account. I did go to the police tonight, but since it wasn't a direct threat, they can't do much. The cop thinks that James was more or less full of crap and just trying to scare me, since some people love getting off on that crap. He said I did the right thing by blocking him and reporting him, and said I should just keep my eyes open and alert the people at my job. Scary thing is, James seemed perfectly normal, but he lied about being married, how he felt towards his wife, and he flipped like a switch. His excuse for not being upfront about being married was what they were going to get a divorce. He seemed so docile and unassuming, and the hatred and aggressive attitude was insane. I have to honestly wonder what would have happened had I gone to talk for 5 minutes. I'm kind of concerned, since they do know where I work, but if either of them try anything, then the cops can actually nail them. What a weekend.
I am a 20-year-old woman that lives on the West Coast, and I've lived here for about 8 months. This happened within the first month of my time here. In most bigger cities, restaurants are partnered with cell phone delivery apps. The delivery people for these apps tend to frequent the restaurant in which I am working. Typically, I see the same 5 to 10 delivery people multiple times a day and get to know them pretty well, except one. He only came in while we were busy, and always tried to talk, and, in annoyance, I would ignore him. One day, this man came by to pick up multiple orders. I gave him the orders and turned around, barely acknowledging him. That is when the questions began. I should have seen the warning signs then. "You don't even want to say hi to me?" he said to me with a smile. The kind of smile that you give someone you know well. The kind of smile that is meant for friends. The way that he looked at me threw me off, but I gave him a small smile and said that I hoped he had a good night. He rolled his eyes and went to put his deliveries in his car. He came back with his phone and told me to put my number in it. I politely declined his offer and began to turn around. "You won't regret it, Charlene," he said gently, pushing his phone into my hands. At this point, I was extremely uncomfortable, but the restaurant was empty, besides the chef in the back of the kitchen, and I couldn't get his attention. So I set his phone down and did what any person would. I wrote down a fake number on a napkin. To my horror, he picked up the number and began to dial it into his phone. He put it up to his ear and rolled his eyes in frustration. "Just give me your real number." I then wrote down my real number, but with no area code, hoping he would be okay with that. And I had just moved here recently, so my area code would not be easy to figure out without knowing of my life before the West Coast. "Charlene, you didn't write down your area code." My heart started beating quickly. I had never given him my name, and I never wore a name tag. "Pick up the phone when I call, and if you answer, I will leave the restaurant." I could tell he meant it. He would not leave until I proved to him that it was my number. He called, the phone vibrated in my pocket, and I knew that I had made the worst decision of my life. I showed him the phone, and he left. I loved my job, but the worst part was the distance. I always took the bus home and had to take multiple switches in order to get home, and it was typically an hour commute. This was not a problem during the day, but by the time I got off work around 11, it was risky. About halfway through my commute, I received a call from a number I did not recognize. I answered out of curiosity, and partly because I thought it was someone asking me to cover their shift the next day. But the voice said, "Oh, babe, you didn't have to take the bus home. I would have driven you home. Someone as pretty as you should never have to do that. What are you doing tonight? Want to come over? My friends are with me. We could come to your place." I quickly hung up the phone. When the bus reached the stop about a block from my home, I was lucky enough to see that my neighbor had been sitting near the front of the bus and was able to walk with him back into our apartment building. For the next 2 weeks, I got 10 calls a day and about 15 texts, all of which were increasingly strange. Most of them were just about how pretty he thought I was, but then they began to make me fearful. He began to offer me money and tell me that he could find me a better job suited more for a girl like me. He started coming in more for deliveries, and I finally told my boss what was happening. The next time he came in, my boss pulled him to the side and warned him that behavior like this was not okay, and that if he did it again, we would report him to the delivery company that he was working for. He stopped for about a month. At this point, I had picked up a morning job too, and would begin walking to work around 5:30 a.m., while it was still extremely dark. On the particular morning, I was so paranoid that I did not turn on music and was looking for people behind me. That is when I saw him. He walked up next to me, as if we were friends, put his arm around my shoulder. Every alarm in my body was telling me to run. "I've been waiting for you. Let me walk you to work. You won't regret it." How did he know that I had gotten another job, too? I declined, telling him that I need to do homework, and turned into the cafe that was closest to us. I made them aware of the issue, and they allowed me to stay inside until he finally decided to leave the area. That's when the private calling began. The frequency of the calls began to pick up, and he would leave angry messages. In my mind, what I did next was a good idea, but I quickly learned how wrong I was. Next time he called, I answered the phone. When he asked why I never made an effort to talk to him anymore, like I ever had, I told him that I was gay, that it wasn't anything wrong with him, he just wasn't my type. Just give me a chance. I could change you. You've just never had a man treat you right. You won't regret it. Things stopped for a while. There was a text here and there, but about a month ago, I began to get weird comments on my Instagram posts. Wow, so beautiful. There are so many things I would do to you. Stop ignoring me. I'm trying to treat you right. And many other comments of this nature. I blocked him, and he would make a new one. He would then call me again a few times and leave a few long messages that I would try to ignore. I stopped taking the bus, and I made sure everyone between my friends and family were aware of the situation, just in case anything happened to me. Then, on Valentine's Day, he showed up again at 3 a.m. outside of my window. I woke up to my name being screamed outside of my window. You see, I live on a busy street, and my bedroom has large windows. I had them open because of how beautiful the night had been before I fell asleep. I turned over without lifting my head, as I knew he would never be able to see me. About every 5 minutes he would scream my name and say that he could see me and he knew I was there. He told me to come down and talk to him, and right before he left, he said one more thing that I almost didn't hear. You won't regret it.
This happened about 6 months ago. I was 22 at the time and my daughter only 4. I lived in a 2-story house with just me, my daughter, and my husband. I was taking at-home classes to be an iPhone specialist, starting at 5 p.m. and ending at 10 p.m. Monday through Friday. My husband had left for his 2 weeks of training he does every year for the military, so it's just me, my daughter, and our pit bull mix, Mavis. I had just finished my classes for the week, and I had the weekend free, so I decided to go to my mother's house until Sunday. So I packed up my stuff and my daughter's stuff, and we went for the weekend. We returned home Sunday to find someone had broken into our home. There are muddy footprints and windows open, but nothing was missing. I was going to call the police, but my sister's husband explained that the cops wouldn't do anything. Nothing happened that night, but the next day my mother came over to pick my daughter up, so I could do my classes without worrying what she was into. They left, and I went to watch the class upstairs. I put the headphones on so I can hear my instructor teach the class, but swear I keep hearing stuff downstairs. I even texted my mom and told her I heard stuff downstairs and it was creeping me out. But she assured me that it was probably just Mavis because everything was locked up tight and no one could get in. I agreed, thinking I was probably just freaking myself out. I continued listening to my instructor teach, and I swear I heard footsteps on the stairs. So I hurry up and take my headset off and listen. I didn't hear anything. I walked down the stairs and didn't see anything either, so I went back to the class. At 10 p.m. my class was over, and my mom decided to just keep my daughter for the night. I was doing my homework with Mavis upstairs with me, and all of a sudden, she started barking and growling and ran downstairs. Now, Mavis usually barks and growls at the slightest noise outside, so I didn't think much of it, but decided I should check it out anyway because of what happened while I was at my mother's. Again, nothing out of the ordinary, so I went back upstairs. I was finally done with homework, and it's about midnight, so I went downstairs and called my mom like I do every night. We were talking, and I decided I opened my daughter's door and peeked my head in. I don't know why I did this because my daughter was at my mom's for the night. Just a habit, I guess. I should have mentioned earlier that when you look in my daughter's room, her bed is on the far wall a good ways away from the door, so you can clearly see under her bed. So I opened the door, and to my horror, a man was under her bed. I just froze and didn't move, just stood there in shock. After what felt like minutes, I slowly shut the door and whispered into the phone to my mom that there's a man in my house under my daughter's bed. My mom was terrified, and she screamed at me to get outside and to stay on the phone with her. She had my brother call the police, so I ran outside with Mavis and waited for the police to arrive. About 3 minutes, they came and searched my house and found no one. But they discovered my bathroom window was open, and they happened to shine their light at the living room window, and I could clearly see 2 huge handprints where they slid the window down. The cops waited for my mom and brother to get there, and while we're waiting, they told me about this man that usually stays 2 houses down from mine with his parents. Both of his parents have a pretty bad drug habit, and this guy has been known to put women in the hospital and trying to kill them. What scares me even more is since we have bought this house, my daughter has been terrified and always told my mom she wanted to stay with her because it wasn't safe at mommy's house. I didn't think too much of it because I thought maybe it was just a new place, and you know how kids are with new places. After this whole thing happened, I stayed with my mom until my husband came home. We decided to ask our daughter about the house. What she told me absolutely terrified me. She said that at night, while her dad and I sleep, monsters come to her window and try to get in. She says it's a boy monster and a girl. The next day, we installed alarms on all the windows and security lights. I can't stop questioning why. Why was this man under my daughter's bed? Was he waiting for me to go to sleep? Was he waiting for my mom to bring my daughter back home and I put her to bed? I get sick to my stomach thinking about what could have happened. Hey guys, Creepy Kile here, and thank you so much for taking the time to watch my very first video. I have been very much looking forward to putting out this content for a while, and I've already received some pretty awesome encouragement and support from some other horror narrators out there, so thank you guys. You have inspired me, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. So thanks again, and also a special thank you to everyone who gave their approval for me to narrate their stories. It was a huge pleasure, and I'm glad that I finally get to do it. So yeah, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and share, and also subscribe to my channel. My channel is probably not going to be visible until I put out a couple more videos, so if you search for it, you're not going to find it in a Google search. You're only going to be able to find it through this link that I provided for you guys. So please, again, be sure to subscribe and spread the word for my channel, because I am going to be putting out more content. I hope to put out around 2-3 videos a month, because as it is right now, that's all I have time for. So yeah, hopefully I'll be able to put out more, but yeah, at best right now 2 to 3 videos a month. But I'm excited to put out any content at all, because I love doing this, and it's an awesome experience. All my social media is on screen as well as in the description below, so please be sure to come check me out on Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and say hello. So thanks again for watching my video, and until next time, keep on creeping on, especially around my channel. See ya.